Hi there, I'm going to show you how I take my Google form and I turn it into a Google Data Studio report so that I can filter my data and use it in really efficient ways. So first of all, I started by creating a Google form, and this one I'm using to track IEP expectations. Now I should say right up front, Alan is my husband and Charlotte and Matthew are my children, so if their expectations seem funny, that's why. They're not actual students that I work with. So I've added in drop-down questions with their expectations in there, so that's going to take up less room on my form when I'm using it. Then I've added in a question that has a scale that's going to let me know the level of prompting that was required for the student to meet that expectation. I've added in a little rubric that's about the success they had with the task, a spot for feedback, and a spot for next steps. When I look at my form, when I go up to preview my form, you can see that by using those drop downs, I'm able to just center in on the expectations of a particular student without seeing all of them listed for all of the students. So there's my form. So I'm going to fill it out just quickly, and I'm going to say Alan's expectation to buy me jewelry needs a lot of prompting and a lot of support for both him to understand it and to apply that skill. So his next step is to try this on your own. And his feedback is good try. So I'm submitting that. I need to have at least one record in my for my form in order for it to generate a spreadsheet. So you can see I've used that form a couple times. So here's my spreadsheet. It's called IEP Tracking Responses. Perfect. Now I'm going to open a new tab and I'm going to type in Google Data Studio. And I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to start a new blank report by clicking on this plus sign. So I'm going to create a new data source that's a Google Sheet. And there's my IEP tracking responses right there. So I'm going to connect that and I'm going to add it to my report. So now I have my blank report. I'm just going to move this table down to the bottom because I don't need it quite yet. I'm going to add some filters. So this is how I might want to sort my data. So I'm going to add this one here. This one's going to be for Alan's expectations. I'm going to add another filter. This is for Charlotte's expectations. And I'm going to add another one, and it's for Matthew's expectations. So I'm just dragging what I want over into this dimension box here, and it's updating the wording in my filter box. I might also want to filter by timestamp because I might remember that a certain thing happened at a certain time. But I think that's good for my filters. So now I'm going to deal with this chart here, which is where my results are going to be displayed. So I'm going to make that the full size of my screen. And I am going to add in that I want the expectation. No, I want the level of prompting. I want the success with the task. That's the application. I actually want to see the knowledge and understanding first, so I'm going to just plunk that in before that. I want to see the feedback and, oops, feedback didn't go in. Feedback and any next steps that were there. And maybe I will add in the timestamp just so that will remind me of when that all happened. I'm going to put that right at the top. Okay, so those are all my columns in my chart. Now I can resize these columns. I don't need these to be, whoops, don't need these columns to be as wide, but I would like my feedback column and my next steps to take up most of the room. I also want to make sure, I'm going to click on the style here. I also want to make sure that my text is going to wrap if my feedback is longer than the space I've allotted. And I'm actually going to get rid of the row numbers because I don't need that. Or maybe I will keep the row numbers to see how many times things happened. Okay, so now I am ready to filter my data. So I'm going to come up here to this view button, this blue view button. And here are this is all my comments about any of the expectations. So I don't want to see them all at once. Maybe I'm working on Alan's expectations. Maybe I'm working on his report card. So I'm going to pull up all of the things that were about him buying me jewelry. So I'm going to click on only to filter down to that one. And you can see there is the comment that I made about him today. So I see the timestamp, I see the level of prompting required, I see that he needed lots of support, and I see the feedback that I gave him. I could turn that off and I could say, I want to see things that happened just on November 8th. And I can see all the things that happened here. Maybe I want to just filter that though by Alan's expectations. So I'm going to click on his expectations and make sure they're all checked off. And then I can see just the things that he did on November 8th. So if we had a particularly difficult day and I wanted to discuss that, we could pull up the data from that day and have a conversation about it. Once I've done all this, I can go back to editing mode and I can make my data report pretty. I could add, maybe I'll add a shape here. And maybe I'll turn it. Why is that not showing me my colors? Well, let's make it dark black for right now. And then I'm going to add a text box over top. And I'm going to give this a title and say IEP tracking. I can add pictures and whatever I want to this to make it as attractive as possible. So I'm going to make my writing a little bit bigger here, maybe even bigger than that, and center it and turn it white. Oh, that's my background, but that's still nice. So this is how I would use Google Data Studio to deal with the information coming from a Google form.